fan of horror stories? Smash that subscribe button and become part of the Dark Whispers crew. Drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let's chat. My first job in a small Chicago office went well. The work was easy, and my boss, Mr. Walters, was polite but distant. I felt at home until I found a mystery. A few weeks in, my coworker Carol saw something odd in the bathroom vent. "Is that a sensor?" she asked. I dismissed it, but it kept bothering me. I peeked at the vent each time I used the restroom. Sometimes the red light was there, sometimes it wasn't. I told myself I was just paranoid. Later, I overheard Mr. Walters talking quietly on the phone. His door was open, and I caught phrases. I tried to figure out what was going on, but the words were odd. Something strange was happening at work, and I needed answers. There was a terrible incident weeks back. After work, Carol sent me disturbing pics from our restroom. She was pale when she showed me. The blurred photos showed us using the toilet without knowing we were filmed. I froze in shock. We told HR, who said they would look into it. The police took our statements but could only try to track the anonymous account that posted it. The office was in uproar. Women were angry, and men were horrified. Rumors flew with one name often mentioned: Walters. No proof, just gossip about him staying late, knowing the camera system, and mostly hiring women. It was awful to think anyone watched those videos. Carl and I felt a mix of shock, anger, and violation that did not go away. I love horror movies, them attractive characters that got a good ending. Similarly, I watch horror movies just round up with friends over the internet. I was at home all alone in the house the following night and feel myself asleep. While asleep, however, an astonishing nightmare appeared to me when someone's hand was holding me down on the stomach so tightly it was forcing me massage into the bed. This made me jump up from sleepway. I was very scared because I saw that a red light was on cameras in my classroom, teachers and students. Subsequently, she said that the canteen, "You ignored us." But in fact, we never left any of you. I fear it that, in present and before long, someone was eavesdropping on me. 2 weeks later, I saw strange-looking aliens flying across my building, and a strange fireball which could put down. It appeared like all these guys were spies watching us. Meanwhile, we find ourselves having identical letters sent to us in capital writing lots on Tuesday today, in the plain envelopes, with no addresses on them whatsoever. Then I, the same person used to enter the "here's the next that is in," often saying that right inside, a paper fell from above, which moved me with terror. I could hardly hold myself. Carol, a friend of mine, took my hand and asked whether I ever knew that something like this could happen. In front of Human Resources were letters exposing a stalker. They made us look like fools. They were lying, saying road repairs were on that day. The truth is, it was all nonsense. I complained about it, but Carol left quietly without telling anyone. She cut off all her social media links and did not reply to any of our calls. I called her and she answered reluctantly, saying, "Emily, do not bother with this matter." The next day, Carol and I sneaked inside the facilities after closing hours. Carol got a flashlight and a chair to climb up into one of the vents so I could see what she was doing, where she was no longer a little object but rather a camera, which had recorded us all moving around. This tape went to the police, who believed us this time. They located the camera feeds, and now they could take steps against the stalker. Then the company claimed it had nothing to do with the matter, since HR summoned some of us to inform us we were laid off without prior notice. Walters somehow missed out on the news of our escape. We were let go when he was away. I packed up quickly and left the office. Next to mine, as I walked out, I saw Durst's office, which was full of smoke. He was turned toward a screen. I told him goodbye, and he looked up and smiled. That was the last time I ever saw him. The police could not find enough proof to open a case. The video showed them a fake account that was not in his name, from which they traced the money sent by the company. The company knew about it and assured the people involved that it was just a scandal and moved on. All of us had a hard time looking for a job. For instance, some references went missing for no reason, or someone gave bad remarks about Mr. Walters. I sometimes remember how close we were to getting him into trouble, but he managed to escape, and maybe he is still doing the same thing elsewhere. I am Lillian. I worked in a marketing firm in Seattle. I was the type of girl who always obeyed my boss's dress code and completed my work on time and went in meetings. but our supervisor, Mr. Patterson, later decided to change to dress code. The new outfits for women were very different. Short skirts, tight tops, and high heels. I felt stunned. How could this be right? Eventually, some of the female workers began to discuss it among themselves. At first, they were probably shocked and unable to express their thoughts, but later on they said what they felt about it. They thought it was too much. They thought Rob should not be the one making the decision, but Rob is the boss and will make the final calls. I had hoped for a friendly workplace, and yet I thought that this was too much for me. It looked like a strict rule, although it was just one of his ways of suggesting to us. Rob in future sent some emails or messages when some of us mixed, such as the new hired workers who thought they were free to look normal like in the days before they received dressing instructions. I wore a skirt which was below the knee, but it was way longer than the Rob's way of dressing plan for this particular day earlier when Rob sent it to me. This was the second time I had gotten a warning from my boss. I was told to go to the office. The boss was seated at his desk. He looked very busy. He did not notice me. Then he said, "You are a great worker. I would not want your application for jobs to be stopped by silly office rules." My heart was racing as I left his office. Haley is the brave one. She is always happy to tell what she thinks in meetings. She is the one who jokes that there are no stupid questions. "The dress code is unfair. I won't follow it," she said in her breakout room. We didn't know what to say. When it was her turn to talk, she was called to the boss's office. The meeting lasted for 40 minutes. She was clearly furious when she came out, with a red face, and would not talk to anyone that night. Later on, she revealed to some of us what had happened. He claimed that she was not a team player. He wants her to follow company values. We all know that it means fall in line or lose your job. "I am going to report the company to the labor board. This is unlawful," she said while clenching her jaw. When I saw her strong spirit, I felt scared. Every person who stood against Patterson was dead. Haley wore long skirts, then loose kurtas. She was not where dress meant this work named friends. Then the mood in the office dropped. Patterson dismissed Haley for theft. She did not steal. A co-worker took her money. Haley wanted to fight against the false blame, so she sued the company for wrongful termination. She collected emails and memos as proof. The actual addresses that Patterson had were the ones framing her and were what brought her into disrepute instead of being responsible for this matter. One day, while working with the local media, some human rights groups came up too. Some of us talked about the case and said it was closed and could get it from the lawyers who had been working on it for the long time of cheating and no longer wanted anything to do with it. I remember how she felt downcast because of this ongoing conflict with them. We met at a cafe around her place before she got the final decision. At first, she was lost in thought, staring at the horizon. I attempted to be cheerful, saying that I would always support her. Guilt and fear were distressing her. There was nothing we could do, at last I know. That was the last time we talked since she died a day later. I told myself that she might just be living somewhere without my knowledge. I did not want nor care to follow down the same route. Thus, I did not bother checking further with the police. Her family put out an SOS on social media. They were impractical. It was a bad out of their hands. Those were messages about her missing. Her pals and kinfolk told the net about the missing. During the time leading to the calls made that day, she didn't quite feel any heavenly or wonderful. She was virtually all forgotten, and she had too much to recollect as to get it to the same case. Everybody was screaming for no small least little. There was an evident silence when the said happening, like in Leah's case, as they were mined, talking nothing. Posters for her said the world was high about it, and Patterson was some like that one whom people are truly a guide that point but remained untouched anyhow, until he was not being bothered by it anymore. In a place where rules weren't followed, I wanted to say what was wrong, but that made me scared. The investigation was closed, but we all buried it in hearts, as if it didn't matter anymore. The way we did things around here hadn't altered, and no one wanted to mention it. So there was a dress code. They seemed like nothing was wrong yet. Haley had been very unfairly dismissed, but Patterson was having one great time. Installing security software was not very exciting, but while cleaning an internal server a few months ago, I discovered something surprising. As I deleted old backup files, I came across a hidden folder marked Archive. This folder was in a strange location, away from other department drives, and had permission restrictions. Clicking on it, I was shocked. There were hundreds of pictures from in and around our office. Women at their desks, restrooms, corridors, and parking lots. Most photos were taken without anyone knowing, forming an eerie feeling. It dawned on me somebody must have been watching and recording these women. I looked at file properties and saw the photos were dated months or even years earlier. The user data didn't have any sense to me, but I had admin rights. It hit me. I was like someone looking at the time horizon by gazing at those pictures, but not able to act. How could such a thing happen without us noticing? I felt uneasy about it. So I went to my boss about this issue immediately. Mr. Rosen is like the big boss. He had on a blue suit and slicked back hair. He talks in a way that makes people follow him. I told him some troubling things he'd done. I showed him records and said we need to fix this. Surprising him, he showed little caring for my proof. He hardly looked at the monitor before closing it. In a flat, chilly voice, he said, "Jared, I like your guts, but let's not blow this up too much." It gave me goosebumps the way he talked. He showed me some employee photos from hard times. He said we had to tell the bosses. Then he sighed. "This is delicate. No need for HR. We'll handle it ourselves, okay?" I still felt confused. I said there were safety problems that could pop up. HR had to notify the cops. He got mad and snapped, "Are you nuts, Jared?" His wall of disapproval was immense. The next day, the HR guy peeked in my office and closed the door. The role of honeybees is vital in maintaining life on Earth, but their population is falling. But non-bee pollinators, such as certain bugs, are actually better at pollinating brasserie crops. No figures have given yet for bee death. Is it due natural reasons or man's actions? The bulbul in the compound is unaware of this. I, an American, took photos while in Kenya. I lost my job all at once. The company staff who hit me did it. After that, they deactivated my work email. They wanted to escape without being exposed. Once I lost my job, I approached my colleagues. They had known the truth behind my termination. However, when I showed them the photos, their silence was deafening. There were no messages or calls from them after that. A week later, my friend Matt called me. Matt worked with me in the same company. He called me at night and said, "If only you had come along with me. I could have had it makes me feel as if you were my best friend." I whispered to Matt, "What's going on?" They showed me the fear tactics used against those who were present during the incident. The people were scared to testify. If they talked, they'd lose their jobs and not get severance packages. One of the girls in the photos, she acted strangely as the laptop camera would turn on and off automatically. HR was contacted, but no help was provided. I once left a job because a male coworker was stalking me. HR tried to blame me. When I sought legal advice, no one wanted to take the case or fight the big company. Some people were afraid of Rosen, the finance guy. He was part of a big family in Austin. That group was powerful. They messed up my job too. Other companies learned some bad stuff from my last workplace. I did not know if Rosen himself or someone more powerful was behind this. I was worried only about time and money then. A strange call came. One of Rosen's boys tricked me to drive with him. He told me they had an emergency. It felt odd. He said, "We can't go against that guy." I acted like I agreed, but my job got even worse. I used to have great experience and references until firms contacted my past employer. I was not sure what Rosen meant, but the interviews dried up fast. Must have been threats. Once an unmarked car hung outside my house, and my emails were hacked. Then a weird call came from out of town. A man talked to me. He was calm and told me the best way was not to worry and put my mind at ease. I was worried and made sure my doors were locked, changed my passwords, and even reset my phone. But still, someone was watching me. One dark night, Matt called again. His breath was short, and he sounded sad. "Jared, do you know guys that when there is no need to chase them? I think they wanted me to tell you by this time." "How did you do that?" "At a bar, stranger has come closer. He said it was wise as not have to speak. Matt, you must go away despite the fact that you have gotten mortgage, but it is not just me. There are also rights of my family. Sadly, I wish had not called you," he told me before accepting that it was over. I just hung up. That was the last I heard from Matt. I do not know what happened. His LinkedIn went dark. The number was not working. One of my colleagues said he left without saying where. No woman got into trouble about pictures that were only in pictures. No lawsuits were there. No investigation was done. Those who complained left or did not complain anyhow. I was let go from my job. Inside, I felt troubled. My heart was void of happiness, as there is little fairness in this planet. Just as others go unchecked, Mr. Rosen is living free now. One day, I may have too much power so that nobody can stop me. A change came to pass when Mr. Miller became our new warehouse team leader, but we did not hope for considerable alterations. Initially, he set down rules like good break time management and fast order finishing, which were tolerable. However, with time, it appeared as though the above mentioned was the primary duty thereof. It was as if instead of being watched, we were forced to obey instructions. That one morning we were told by Mr. Miller about a new way of carrying loads, and that we would have no second chances after mistakes made hereafter, just his orders. We all had a puzzled look on us at that time when Mark reported being late for 5 minutes that day. Mark smiled when his drill instructor Miller made him drop to the ground for 20 push-ups. But soon the smile faded when Miller glared at Mark. He was strict and serious. Miller had a special way of talking to us about being late and kind of playing around. For him, when one is late, one will have to be lazy for 1 hour, as the talk was like that. It lets you say the same guys messed around, and Mark had to do it with this program. A mistake meant 20 squats, but during breaks, you'd run around. We all hated it. It was humiliating. One afternoon, a small mistake on the invoice brought a big row between Miller and Carl. Quickly, Miller picked up on Carl's broken action, so he had to run 2 laps as they both served in silence. I managed well by my doctor, who had said that because the patient wasn't seriously sick, but he had undergone heart surgery. Very weak, so I could only lecture him. Carl's voice was equal to that of others in class. As Miller looked at everyone, he sighed at last. Carl used his hands as he anxiously climbed up and down the staircase until he was tired. It seemed that he was a little bit behind Gwen in terms of appearance. He desperately has to search for some kind of help. Maureen appeared to be the only person in his chasing radar. Carl, unfortunately, had been suffering from heart problems. It was difficult for him to express himself clearly at the moment. He even ended up gasping for air. After the highly demanding activity, Carl left the 3 exits of the block, drenched in sweat and panting. He wondered if this was indeed true for him, or just illusion before the others, with departing views, as if they were saying which faintly heard that he had mastered the art of running now, in spite of the obvious condition of his health being regained. Thus, some level of consciousness still remained unclear on whether indeed breathing was a problem. Clinging to the table, Carl gasped for breath. Miller stared him down and said, "You better toughen up, or you are going to pay for your errors." Then Carl suddenly fell over in front of us, and his legs went limp as he hit the floor on his head. The air was filled with fear, just like when someone gets slapped right in their face. And somebody called out, "Did you hear me, Carl?" I was going to call 911, but Miller stopped me, saying there is no contact until I say so. He then got down on Carl's level and told him, "You are all right. You are safe." Everyone was shocked when Jerry just stopped breathing. It was horrible. I could not care less about how he felt. It was like he had the whooping cough, gasping for air. His chest was tight and he was struggling to breathe. I disagreed with Miller and called 911. He threw me down and yelled, "Hang up," and I pulled my arm away as my heart raced for poor Carl. He was not breathing, and we started taking turns giving him CPR. Miller was screaming like a guy being locked in a small room, saying there were too many cops and medics. I could not see through my tears as Carl got no response from the CPR in shock. I felt so relieved when he shook his head. The crowd broke into whispers, most of them ignoring me. Carl had a wife and a kid in college while he faced dying because of a dumb belief. Miller seemed unfazed, just touched his head and sighed like it was just an annoyance. He was cool like a robot when police arrived, as though he had done it many times before. He had been ordered not to look at me. Nevertheless, after a glance or two, it was as though he was holding me responsible for what had happened. I felt bad that they did not heed my warnings. There was a crowd watching the event. Everyone witnessed what unfolded. But when asked about it, Miller had said that it was not quite as serious of an accident, as Carl was going to die a few days afterwards. He only did not mention to have persuaded anyone into doing that kind of thing. He restated the earlier statement. He was right in having mentioned that, and the good thing was the company was not penalized for that issue. Detroit Stanley, an attorney, was assigned before even the accuser proved that there were injuries that resulted from work activities. In court, the case was lost by them. But they were given a secret settlement. It looked like hush money to others. They were paid off whilst Miller continues to be employed, and the warehouse acted as if Carl had never been there. Nothing changed. No meeting or mourning publicly that much for the dead coworker. All we were doing was to speed up the pace of work so that a mistake would not earn us punishment. He was really the only person we could not take out of the crowd. The saddest thing is that he was an unwilling participant in that accident. This opportunity would have been good for him to be with the unfortunate fellow, but he told us to stay put. Yet in the next minute, he had been seen coming out of the office. My boss made me feel uncomfortable. I had trouble resigning the job I had. Whenever Mr. Harris, the boss, was around, I felt uneasy. He would place hands on shoulders and backs. He stayed too long leaning and talking by desks. After weeks, I wondered if I was overreacting. Maybe he just touched people too much? The office women also disliked it. His presence made the room tense. All chatter ceased at once. The light switched off. I felt an attack. My friend Julia had comments for me. I was writing reports. The manager took a girl to a private meeting, and she was fired. I felt uneasy watching the girls talk to the guys. The guys seemed to expect something from the girls. The director's way of being with me was odd. He invited me alone into his office. I was scared when he called me her. I smiled much as I should not. He thanked me, helped him with the symposium project. I told him I was proud of it. The then he feels uneasy about could not touch my bag. The office was too small for me. He had legs crossed, arms folded. Legs rest with me appeared to analyze my work. I am prepared. Just assign the task to me, and I will work to achieve accurate results. My face was set in a painful expression. However, my grip on the strap of my bag revealed my strength. His monotonous voice insinuated a robotic nature. I found myself taking on a leadership role. In that way, I was lucky to be with my colleagues. His tone indicated he could probably understand how difficult they were. I stretched a polite grin. I expressed my gratitude and regarded him as he observed me. In addition, he moved slightly, making it seem as if he was going to make contact with me. My reaction was immediate. I stepped back before he noticed me. It was in that instant when he stated that he had been invited out for dinner and had to leave. There was a brief alteration on his smile. Then he remarked about having further discussions with me, and that he left quietly too. I entered my car so swiftly, my heart was racing, and my hands felt clammy. From then onward, there were multiple stories about him which were either exaggerated or misconstrued. At first, he had selected some girls for his mentoring program. After some time, he had dropped them. They were still disclosing the way they were treated. No one was aware of the situation. If there were complaints, there were no efforts made towards addressing them. A coworker sarcastically said, "We acted happy though we had problems." Tina was a hardworking colleague that none of us called a troublemaker for 2 years. One day, there was silence in the office. I was late with an email when Mr. Harris went to talk to Tina. I couldn't hear them. Everyone was happy until I talked to poor Naman. Tina looked for help when no one was near. She sighed and entered Mr. Harris's office. I didn't pay much attention at first. Then I heard a yell and a crash. It went silent. Julia, sitting by me, was nervous. With widened eyes, we were gripped by a panic attack. We only sat there in silence, not moving or breathing. My body was screaming for me to get up and do something, but I felt like a frozen statue just sitting there. A minute passed. The door opened. Tina came out. She could hardly see the sun. The world was spinning. She got in a car. No one noticed. A resignation note was sent. It was called Last Day on Earth. There was no reason given. I understood. It was my turn to go too. Tina had panicked everyone. Mr. Harris made us scared too. He did not try to hide it. Everyone knew it. He gave hard orders. He smiled little. His smile seemed dreadful. We did not talk about him unless we had to. I kept worrying about the future, so I took the job. It did not take long. I packed my things. I just left. Others stayed back. I still write to them. Mr. Harris was still the boss. He still did the same old tricks. No one could stop him now. That was how it was. People laughed off our speculations. We did not partake in merrymaking on Fridays. There were reports to draft for the Denver office to be considered business meetings. Though we few women were asked about typical questions like the perfume and route taken home. The debate was nonsense at Toddlers National Daycare Center's park as others laughed about it. The format of requirements that women received shocked me clearly pertaining unfamiliar area. Though women were impressed, I showed Lily, "This is silly." She told me so too. Assigned works being office levels were. They had an odd sort of rule background. Mr. Jackson did nice things, but cannot the regional director be let off? Having probably concealed, he was again from administrative work that I thought somewhat ironical. These questions seemed terrible indeed. To disclose perfumes? Random initiative. I bet it was brand-related clients' recognition about two different friends overheard respectively break room. Yesterday, Sarah and I spoke in a hushed tone. I questioned her if she had heard about Chloe's recent misfortune. Chloe left a blank answer on one of the questions last week. Now she has been put on probation as a result of that. I found it to be quite astonishing, given the circumstances. On the day when the matter was raised, the men present did not comment about it either. The fact that she is being penalized because she did not fill in all of the questions is quite absurd. To be honest, I do not like to disclose my personal life to strangers. I, however, put in descriptions of my work areas, but I did not include personal information in those sections. That Monday morning, my report was returned back with a red comment. Mr. Jackson said I needed to fill out one of the fields. I felt a bit amused when he told me this. If he had asked for... This was such a silly move by my friend at work. Later at lunch, I informed my colleagues about it. I apologized, stating that it was a mistake I made. I asked them if they had experienced anything like this situation before. Lily was by chance next to us. I see your point, but there's nothing we can do. The HR is useless, and Mr. Jackson isn't exactly helpful either. Subject: Compliance Report Notice. By the mail. I was warned that I must correct the reporting fields. I did submit by Nicole since they are not omissible. The report in question contained nothing other than a questionnaire. Just that I don't see why it had to be this precise. So it went on. I resubmitted the report but still did not indicate on the personal questions. I wasn't warned yet. I received an email from HR requesting me to report at 10:00 a.m. for a discussion about reassignment. This was strange. I had performed well for 2 years in my current position. The HR manager welcomed me with a polite smile, suggesting I sit. But avoiding gazing at me, Nicole, a decision has been made to transfer you to a different department with immediate effect. She started folding her hands and checking there was no reason given apart from boredom on the part of the women. There was also the case of some complaints from customers regarding slow services from Erica team. I gritted my teeth as she told me that the processing team was a demotion for it, was meant for those whom they wanted out. Maybe someone might learn. Just let it go, Nicole, will you? I wished for some different words. She only stared down at her desk. I knew the meeting was over. I hobbled back to my desk without even one person giving me kindness or support. The message was clear. Answer questions. Conflicts result in being just as I was. My final string was pulled 2 weeks later. Most of us had left the office. I noticed Lily sat at her desk with a funny-looking face. I asked, "Are you okay?" She turned her screen towards me. There was an email from Mr. Jackson. "It's worse than we thought," she said in a shocking tone. "Lily, you're my main cooperation. I enjoy your reports. They're very interesting. I propose you to the other company. Let's sit down to supper on Friday at 7 p.m. Let's not make the others jealous." Lily responded with astonishment. I told my teammates it might be time to think about going public with the company. Lily was scared. What if we did not get the money to continue? I let her know that we should not talk about it to anybody. We had data on different ways to let out this story. We had taken screenshots, emails, and documents that showed that the boss was curious. There was no time to lose, as we were only a week away from the news being known. The headline read, "Denver's boss being probed for wrongdoing at work." Other former employees revealed worse cases. The HR department had nothing serious to say about the matter. Miss Jackson was bound to go. It was in order to leave the company along with Lily. It was not worth staying on. Hi, I am Jessica. I was given a job at a firm in San Francisco. After that, my boss, Mr. Perry, turned out to be a social media freak. At the start, it looked like a habit. He kept talking about engaging with customers or branding online. One day, Mr. Perry convened a meeting for everyone. He spoke about the corporate culture and social media. He created new departments for this. At first, we thought it was a joke, but he asked everyone to join in. The CEO also participated. It was no longer funny. He sent us direct emails with links to his Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn accounts. We had to support the company by participating in his posts. At first, it was a small annoyance. It was easy to click and type a generic comment. But things changed. We began to believe he was tracking our posts. He would bring it up casually. Some co-workers from my previous job thought it was just corporate nonsense. But some believed that it was a campaign against the company policy. Then, Emma from HR talked to me at lunch about my Facebook post. She said it had leaked to others. She teased me about not showing team spirit. Mr. Perry worked harder than we did. The tech told us all he used some software to work out who was active. Perry could even see anyone that wasn't pulling their weight. This made me feel bad when he was let off. Perry said to have been in meetings only to have some people whispering about him. I learned he only saw Brian looking at who wasn't active. We got it wrong thinking Perry had the highest number of likes. Then Perry was told Evans, "You'd make an awesome team leader." Why is Mr. Perry, the new worker, speaking only with you? Shouldn't I answer more? The bigger group will be more pleased like this. I worried about his response. He texted me quickly about liking your post, and now he was chatting me now. I tried. I merely offered some advice without stressing the team. He ignored it. Then I watched my coworkers acting weird. More comments plus likes and more forced excitement made me realize the problem was bigger than I had thought. A few days later, my boss sent me a personal message. Mr. Perry said I was smart and wanted to talk over dinner. I had not known he had crossed the line. My stomach turned as I was unsure what he wanted. I replied politely but firmly that I only wanted a professional relationship. He did not respond after that. The next day I was uneasy in the office. Mr. Perry avoided looking at me during our weekly meeting. He only smiled a few times when team results were discussed but ignored me otherwise. I took both these situations as relief and concern. Then at lunchtime I asked Emma privately if Mr. Perry had contacted her too. She just shuddered and said yes. Then suddenly, I got a performance review from him. The whole thing surprised me. The chill that nipped at me became almost palpable. It had a pessimistic feel. It was endemic to those you'd have talked to about me. Anna and Sarah told me what was on their minds. It was a reason for me to feel the same chill as they did. As if it wasn't enough, people took about my comments when they supported me. This was an attack on me. It was specific to me. Same for others. I did wane away from Mr. Perry on the social channels that night. Upon the new day, Mr. Perry called me in. I got into his office and I sought to put up a brave face. All the while, he was engrossed in his phone. Finally, he looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, Jessica. I noticed you are being disengaged." This was shocking. He had this smirk that was deterring me from focusing, but I tried not to burble anything. "I thought the world is known for its wits of you being alone," he dragged on. Then suddenly he said, "What are we going to do now? You have two options, either the way I'm used to seeing or are punishing this a lot." All that remained were days of agonizing pressure. I remained unsettlingly calm so that I could contribute to the team, but it was too hard. Yet my ideas were not tolerable to him. I sensed it was all over my plans as far as the job was concerned. I was not granted a project, and others were given it. Emma's note caught me unawares. "Have you heard about Sophie?" Sophie was at the entry-level marketing, and she was the very first responder to Mr. Perry. I inquired what she was about. It was that Sophie had been dismissed, and the excuse given was that her performance was poor. This left me flabbergasted, for Sophie did exceedingly well. She did not pick up anything on the past week's post. My resume was sent out late one night. I was hopeful the next day would bring interviews. Instead, I was told my job was eliminated. I packed my things feeling shocked. My boss watched me without any expression. In a month's time, I found anew. However, now whenever a new boss wants to be my friend on Facebook, I have second thoughts. Some employers make employees work long hours under unreasonable managers. Others have stress-free environment. I guess they just want to supervise what we do, only that they do not care if it is for long hours. Hi, my name is Mike, and I work in a small company in Dallas. The company allows us free health cover. I thought this was a wonderful thing until I saw how insurance works in the USA. It made me uneasy. The health cover is good, but Mr. Hall, the boss, kept praising it. At first, the HR team gave us detailed programs 100% for emergencies and checks through doctors. However, since we did not have to pay anything at all, the deduction was very light for every month in our payslips. I thought the insurance plan went real good. Sure, others confirmed they have used it, and there's none had ever complained thus far. But my friend John once had a terrible cold, which turned to bad pneumonia, and doctors said he needed immediate treatment. He also thought he could just rely on his insurance. But that was when things started getting unsettling. John called the HR of his company about a claim that to fill out some additional pieces of information. He thought this was normal at first, since insurance companies require a lot of paperwork. It became odd when he was asked for copies of documents. These included his medical history, a letter from his doctor, and a statement from the hospital confirming his admission. He was too weak to argue, so I told him I would arrange to get the papers for him. I tried to contact the insurance company, but their voicemail was always busy. They did not have a customer portal or a place to submit claims. They just had a contact form, which was not helpful. I brought this up with HR, but they only repeated what they were programmed to say. They claimed that they were investigating the issue, although they used to be on the same side. They were only attempting to fine-tune their processes over time. It was unfortunate for John, who was in the hospital, but had to pay part of his treatment costs out of pocket besides the insurance. I couldn't have done those treatments because I simply did not have that kind of money. Who would I be? Then I discovered the truth behind it. Something was wrong with John. He had gotten worse. The doctor stated he needs stronger antibiotics or should be on oxygen in the hospital for a longer time until funds become available. The hard truth was he had no money, nor did we. I was extremely angry, so I marched into HR demanding answers. The representative there, a guy named Eric, was. People often stammer and repeat things constantly. We were complaining that things take long. Mr. Hall offered to help by fixing things up, so I went to see him at once. I told him how John was in the hospital dying, yet they denied his claim. Mr. Hall said they were just doing what they were told and could not make exceptions. But how can writers use such long words we don't even speak? I'm not a public speaker, though. Hall told me the procedure that one needs to believe in oneself to succeed in life. Some people are smart enough to know that we are not all equal in this life. It is just pure chance that one has any better chances of winning big than the others. That was when Mr. Hall said this matter should be handled right now. He also understood I wasn't happy, but told me that it was beyond him. This made me realize the problem that we had stemmed from the staff's dishonesty. I resorted back to my office and read through the insurance policy document. The policy coverage details were just some document which was not authentic, as it gave wrong details of an unknown provider with some P.O. box to contact. The phone number only leads to a general call center manned by any agents. This is zero guarantee for anybody else. John had a plan, but it was just their empty words. So when they sent him home, he couldn't go on being treated there. Days later, he died unknowingly that he was never insured as well. The ozone depletion can widely happen in the Earth's atmosphere, and the sunlight warming makes it possible for the ozone layer to hold on the deadly ultraviolet UV rays. Their effects are the skin issues, blindness, etc. Such substances allowing solar radiation to penetrate, as it falls under a group of hydrocarbons, e.g. freon, have exposed the ozone layer. There existed a treaty dubbed Montreanic, which guided to ozone layer protection on taking place through phase out of the ozone layer, depleting substances, therefore making each and everyone free from diseases that might result from sun rays. We thus put regulations safeguarding not only the ozone layer, but also each one of us from the ozone layer depletion effects. There was a case. John's family had a lot of debt. The hospital didn't help. They said there was nothing to be done. It was wrong. People die like this. Mr. Hall is still in charge. He needs people to work. Fake insurance policies exist. I am Ashley. I work in marketing. Our boss, Miss Cooper, started a fitness program. At first, we thought it was just emails, but it turned into a women's fitness group. Miss Cooper tried to boost our work. She gave special food to different groups. She herself ate a burger and 2 beers when we had worked hard. Only she was offended by this. She forced herself to be polite. If anyone picked a bagel, she said that carbs slow you down. Anyone was elsewhere reminded that health habits carry success into life. We said that she is the boss. What could we do about this? Most of us dismissed it. But soon the discomfort level went up fast. There was a board called Wellness Progress in the office kitchen. Miss Cooper said we will weigh ourselves weekly to track fitness. At first we thought it was a joke. Miss Cooper is funny and relaxed. She weighs everyone and writes it down on the board. When it was her turn, she looked nice and smiled. The way she weighs others shows she is in charge of the fitness thing. She picks one woman at a time to weigh. It does not seem easy for them, but they did well. Miss Cooper made us brave, and we helped each other. When Miss Cooper told me to weigh, I was shy. She called me Ashley and then said, "Let us check your progress." I wanted to run away, but all were looking at me. I stepped onto the scale and my face was red. Miss Cooper told everyone my weight. No one cares my name, as we can support each other get fit as in other ways too. Many women in my office used to dread Sundays. They ate lunch at their desks. There was made barely any conversation. I gave up on snacks for this. The day that Miss Cooper lacked of feeling excited was present. While pouring myself a cup of coffee, Miss Cooper pointed at me. She claimed that I was for Stockade Ashley for overeating. I was shocked she showed my weight to others. Instead of the simple exercise I had expected, I was assigned the long one. I left the question unfinished. That was the first time I got exposed. It was incredibly embarrassing points before my colleagues by Margaret had stood out there. I had a tough time, not in the kitchen, but rather for 20 minutes. I watched myself cry with the aid of a mirror. My pain was like the puzzle, and I was not to blame for the scheme. I've been anorexic at times and felt tortured. I had to choose between laughter of angels and tears of demons. It was horrible for me. I was concerned about 2 people. One was Sarah, who had grown thin even though she ate little except for black coffee. She would arrive early and leave late just so Mrs. Booper would not know. I guessed that she had been hiding. On the day Sarah stood before a bathroom mirror and fixed up loose blouse, she was as shaky as a leaf. While she cried, I softly asked her if she was okay. Her shivering body showed that she recognized me. I wanted to believe her when she said, "Yes, I'm too tired." A few days ago, Mrs. Cooper had affected her with the bench wherein Sarah hardly stepped on the scale. After the weigh-in, Miss Cooper disagreed that Sarah had made any progress. She asked Sarah to step on the scale, and Sarah looked like she shone like the sun. She had improved in lab work. Then Sarah rolled up the score. Mrs. Cooper beamed at her with delight. Sarah was surprised that Mrs. Cooper was so excited anyway. Sarah had been working hard but felt not equal to what Mrs. Cooper said. I watched Mrs. Cooper from the scale and saw her knees were shaken. That meant she asked if she could just eat. She nodded, then looked exhausted. Her skin was pale and eyes deep in. I told her she needed to eat something. She said she previously heard that she could not tell it that very much. She said also about the HR. The HR did not hear much of what. Miss Cooper had a strong backing from her colleague. Some had tried to complain, but it fared not well with them. Some were transferred secretly. Sarah could no show up this Thursday. At noon, Scott saw an ambulance in front of the house. There were rumors that somebody called for Sarah. Dehydration and hunger had drained her out of energy. The paramedics found her unconscious. Miss Cooper said some people can't deal with being alone. So I wasn't surprised when Sarah came to help me, because she was the only one who stayed overnight in the hospital with me without saying goodbye. Our company planned to create a wellness electric scooter, but Miss Cooper confused me for months and I lost track of what we were doing. I felt scared about seeing or hearing her again because it reminded me of Sarah in the break room, with shaking hands and vacant eyes. I make sales trips for work. Flying and meeting people is routine for me. The company pays for everything: flights, hotels, etc. At first it was me, Mr. Ando, and a lady. It was very formal. There were small things I didn't notice then. He booked hotels, but I thought it was just for work, yet only ladies stayed there. Men arranged their own places. I would always see Mr. Anderson when I checked into the hotel. My roommate's room was near mine. I thought I could sneak into her room when the men were not around. However, Mr. Anderson still came. I believed he planned it. However, on my solo trip, it happened again. There were 3 of us at the Chicago conference. 2 were Mr. Anderson's female employees. I was the one to welcome them. After changing my blouse, at 7, he texted me about dinner in the lounge. He did not phrase it like an invitation. I replied that I would come. When I arrived, he was the only one around, drinking and smiling. He said others canceled. I felt weird the first time I cracked a joke. Finally, I just took a seat. Mr. Anderson asked me questions about my relationship status, living situation, and free time activities before suggesting a drink in his room later that night. I felt uneasy and left quickly after saying goodnight. I told myself I was overthinking it, but a text from Mr. Anderson inviting me for friendly drinks later made my heart race. I typed in my code and entered my apartment. My Aunt Bern had been confused each time she came to visit. This caused me a bit of discomfort. She was at the doorman, being greeted by the doorman when she next came over. Her presence felt like an intrusion. The streets appeared to be deserted. As my thoughts were heavy, it seemed like life was coming to an end. I became so absorbed in the secret that I forgot Aunt Bern had even been there until I found myself outside the front steps. I was scared and alone in a dark room, and I waited for help. I was looking for a way to fix my computer that shut down at an important point. I must go to restore some files. No one else in the room with me. It is just me, worrying. And I can hear the music from a brand new scary ghost story. It sends shivers down my spine. It is quiet. But when I hear some noises upstairs, I stop thinking about my computer. Now I am watching the shadows moving across the floor. I close my eyes and stay as still as possible because I am afraid the ghost will catch me. Whatever I am scared of, I am stuck here in this dark, empty room with only my palm top. My mind is racing, and I guess that I am not alone anymore. So, on this one night, I can't rest easy for sure. The door of the dressing room was open, although I was weary already after the talks with Mr. Anderson on the following day. He wanted us to meet at the bar in the hotel for drinks. Even though I felt like I ought to say no, I ended up agreeing. However, I told him I would only take 1 drink, and as soon as I got there, he had already ordered the drink. He asked me, "What really can I do for you?" To tell you the truth, I guessed that he was simply trying to flatter me. In spite of that, I went on with my normal way of talking during the conversation about the sales expectations for the business. The moment he suddenly interrupted, I was really speechless. He simply said, "Katie, you have indeed the potentiality to make it here up to the summit in the future." I was able to discern that he was showing how much he did wish to try influencing people against me. Something somehow went wrong inside me. In reaction to his comments, I started feeling flattered. Nonetheless, I was really flattered. I did cautiously reply to him that you happen to be really right. He said yes with a smile upon his face, signifying that he is the kind of guy who would agree with everything. He took his drink and put it down on the table. Then the ambiance turned dramatic again. I replied hello, but that I did not feel okay, and then it seemed as though I was having a bad day. Maybe I had to go home early. He put on a long face and said to me, "You are serious?" I explained to him that I was just feeling very tired. He looked at me as if he had something serious more than that, and asked, "How do you think I should bear the brunt of his wrath if you want regarding really well with me?" I rose from my seat, muttering something incomprehensible as I walked out. He continued saying that, "So you were with him all last night?" I was so furious about his insolence. I was locked in my closet. My mind raced. It was 1:47 a.m. Then I heard someone trying to open the door. I couldn't see, just shadows. My phone rang. An uncle was calling, yet I fell asleep while holding the phone. I thought I was in a hotel jail. A rude client had knocked and scared me. I called security. Finally, it was silent. No footsteps or voices. My grip on the phone tightened. Then, I drifted off to sleep again. When I left the hotel, Mr. Anderson chatted with me. After that, I heard Jenna from marketing had quit. Something worse to me. I never thought about shaking my hands at the only one who just faded away without even bothering to say goodbye or explain herself. I did not even try it. For me, that was a good decision. I did not want to go through hell again. When I got to the office, I found that Jenna from marketing had just left without saying anything. No one knew why she left. She just said that she had quit. I was really frustrated, and I texted her asking if she was okay. She replied, "Leave while you can." I confirmed I was going to the hospital the next day. I didn't report any mistakes, and I had no excuse for not coming. I wish I knew what Jenna dealt with. I wish I could confirm if Mr. Anderson was caught, though I am sure he is still there as one of the new employees. I remember I was in James Style a couple of years ago at a small IT startup in Los Angeles. The environment was lively above trends with chat bags and coffee machines. Young people full of life were our fellows people. We were happy too. It was a big building, so we were optimistic that we were together constructing something big, cutting edge or starters. Mr. Walker, the CEO, made it clear to us that we were family from the first day of my employment. Families can do anything they want. My first impression was that the words were motivating for them. Love, persistence, and the need to go beyond normal working time were the topics. The overtime rules seemed strange that they were too informal. The common practice of staying longer was quite obvious, and those not staying after the closing time didn't feel like a part of the team, even though it was not said directly. However, people's going over after the finish time was the pressure, kind only, that it was more of the subtle than the overt. There are those who were first to stay. This habit of those who would dare to venture staying beyond the regular hours of work became common amongst others. Those that managed it were celebrated greatly, for they were regarded as the shining stars during team meetings. There was recognition given to them via emails, where they exchanged casual comments about a number of things that were non-work related. Given these exchanges, it is noted how such off-work behaviors were feared by some who had punctually leaving habits at the office cut across various departments. At first, it started gradually, with an occasional late-night brainstorming session, as well as quick fixes that turned into a 3-hour debugging marathon. Thus, weekend meetings were not mandatory, but people preferred sitting together at a cafe fire. Place it seemed there was need to be noticed then, as well as be recognized after hours by others themselves. The lunch break, there were folks that used to relax or chat in their office, but now they make plans for a quick meal to avoid missing any of the challenging tasks, thus feel overwhelmed being still on shift, while it appeared to be merely an initial stage towards building company culture, for I did understand how it would work with time. At 6 p.m., Sarah was the first one to leave from work. Then Mr. Walker mocked her. He saw her take her bag and leave without asking. It had been 6 months. I was usually working 12 to 18 hours a day. Weekends, I had meals like midnight snacks. When we got tired, then we jested it was like high. Mr. Walker normally just told us, just gave us encouraged stupidity. He thought win just become evident. No one forced us, but they let us know about our future there. Evenings were always busiest. Most slumbered off at nights. Only few were workers, as some turned red-eyed and some took pills up caffeine. This was not anything which persisted, nor was any of us ready to admit. He whispered to me that he's not sure. I tried to chuckle, but I couldn't find it amusing that we're all there that night as I was collecting my things. It was around 2 a.m. Matt was still staring blankly at his screen. I contemplated asking him to head home, but thought it pointless. I just left him there and figured I would see him in the morning. However, Matt was not present for our daily morning meeting. No one cared initially. He might have come too late or taken a day off. Then around noon, the guys observed his laptop on with the program frozen. His chair was farther back than before, as if he walked in his sleep for a moment. Then, getting off to achieve a goal, we stumbled upon him. He was dead weight. Suddenly, means to an end, head down, arms. The idea of him being asleep at the front passed through my mind too. Poke his shoulder. Damn, Matt, rough night. No answer. Somebody else gave a stronger poke. Matt, anything? Thus, the first assumption was dashed. We raised our voices, calling out for Matt this time with more emphasis in unison, moved forward as we spoke. Hee-ha! Seemed like a corpse, only paler. I sought to touch his flesh. I withdrew due to being icily cold with chaos surrounding us. Suddenly, a cry went up for help. Another person called for 911. while others came in trying to drag him off the chair. They yelled, kicked, called out, but nothing happened. Ambulance response time was unacceptable. They took forever, looking for the pulse shining torch into eyes. On one of their faces showed me. It all, even they were speechless by their findings, had to state that this may have been a stroke.